God has taken me on a journey of forgiveness, deliverance, healing, and love, with a call for a divine purpose. The New Testament serves as a reminder of God's love, His grace, and transformative power in Jesus. What is a testament? A testament is something that serves as a sign of evidence, a specified fact, event, or quality. But what is the biblical definition of a testament? A testament is a statement of belief. The most famous testaments are two parts of the Christian Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we see a consistent pattern in the Old and the New Testament comprised in these four parts: deception, discernment, deliverance, discipleship. I'm Coco Ramos, and this is my New Testament. I felt something I have never felt walking into that water. I can't even explain, but when I rose out of that water, something shifted in me. And I was just glad to be united with Jesus. I wasn't hiding from Him anymore. I just knew in that moment that it was going to be the best decision of my life, and my life would be different. And I would start to think different. I would begin to see His truth, His ways, His life. And there's something so comforting and eternal in that. It's truly freeing. Okay, so let's run it back from being born to born again. In the beginning, I was born on June 17th to my amazing parents. They're so cool. Family is so important to us. We really live and enjoy life together. We're not perfect people, but we do our best. I grew up on the West Coast, Seattle. Lots of family, always had family parties. We were always celebrating something, like we were that family. I also went to Catholic private school. This is me in kindergarten. I was so little, so naive, so innocent. When I was in Catholic private school, I did all the things. I did baby dedications, baptism, first communion. God had His hand on me this whole time, and He had me on this path. And then sometimes we veer off that path, we get lost, we go crazy, we wild out, and then we get to a point in life where we are so desperate and we need a Savior. And I needed a Savior. But the good news is that we all eventually find Him again. When was the first time you felt deceived? What age were you? I remember the first time I was told to keep a secret from someone who I thought I could trust. I was very young, kindergarten, first grade. And this has to be the first time that I recall that I would experience what would be described as feeling shame, feeling guilt, condemnation, a loss of innocence. And you become aware that there's evil in the world. My innocence was taken from me at the age of 5 by 2 of my female babysitters that would take advantage of me in a way no child should ever experience. I was being groomed. And I can go into the details of that season and what I remember and how it traumatized me and how it affected me moving forward, but that's not the main focus of my testimony. My testimony is like everyone else's testimony. It's how I came to know Jesus and how he changed my life. You know, when something like that happens to you that young, you can find yourself your entire life trying to reconcile what happened. Or now you're just more aware that you gotta watch your back because people can't be trusted. This world can't be trusted. So from that first experience where I felt shame, I felt guilt, and I wanted to hide because now I had this secret, I began to see the world differently. You know, it was really hard for me to trust people from that day on. But not anymore, because I have Jesus now. His ways are my ways. And I forgive her. To the women who took my innocence, I forgive you. My mom pulled me out of private school after first grade and I went to a different school. So what happened from here to here? The best way I could describe this era of life, it's the scene from The Matrix. Well, what's interesting, in real life, the red pill represents the truth and the blue pill represents the lie. And in this season of life, I wasn't sure what pill to take. Speaking of The Matrix, I literally thought I was Trinity from The Matrix when I was a kid. I thought one day I would play an action hero doing martial arts, fighting bad guys.
Devil, lay down, dish that level, make devils pray now.
My parents told me before I could even walk, I would pull myself up and hold on to the seat of the sofa and then try to kick like my dad. My dad, he was a well-rounded martial artist. He did taekwondo, he did karate, also did a little bit of boxing and MMA. I was around it all the time and still am today. A big part of my childhood I spent training in karate. I was obsessed with it. I was dedicated, I was focused, and I worked hard. I spent hours and hours every day for years training for belt promotions and competitions. I wanted to be the best. I traveled nationally, I competed internationally, and I won a lot. I learned a lot of discipline and mental strength and work ethic. It really developed parts of me that created structure in my life. I had some of my best childhood memories at that time. Life was good. It was really, really good. When I was 9, I remember having my first real crush. It was this boy at my karate dojo. I thought he was so cute. He was a good kid. We started karate at the same time. We went through all the belt promotions together. We even had to compete against each other in tournaments. I always beat him though. Our parents were friends too. This crush lasted a really long time, all the way to junior high school, but he always liked someone else, and that was that. Junior high and high school, that was an era. You know, you're put into this education system that also feels like a social experiment, right? And it could just be overwhelming as a teen. You know, our prefrontal cortex is not developed yet, right? So the ability to think rationally is challenging and it's emotional. Your body goes through these changes, you know, or you're around a new group of people, older kids who have influence over you. And I started to make dumb decisions at this point. With peer pressure, having good and bad judgment is based on popularity. And being popular in high school isn't a good thing, but kids do things to get acceptance and approval. Although that feeling in my heart told me not to, I skipped school for the first time with my friends. I didn't get caught, ignoring that feeling in my heart started to feel exciting, and I started to crave that feeling. I now had more secrets to keep from my parents, so I kept doing wrong until I got caught. And my parents were strict, like really strict Christian parents. Then you experience teenage angst and rebellion. I just wanted to do what my friends were doing. And we had no idea what we were doing. We were just trying to be cool and imitate what the older kids were doing. And I was also influenced by TV and movies that I would watch and music that I would listen to. I idolized these celebrities. I had idols. In high school, I loved to dance. Because of karate, I became a good dancer very quickly. I could pick up choreography very fast because of karate. The memorization of learning forms, we call them katas, became very easy for me. And I was known in high school to be a good dancer. I even won talent shows with my dancing. Being a hip-hop dancer meant I consumed rap 24/7, which means I was feeding my mind with sex, drugs, alcohol, pride. I was being groomed in a new way that helped me make my decision to take the blue pill. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. I remember tasting alcohol for the first time in high school, and that eventually led to something excessive in my life. Teenage rebellion again. I was finding ways to lie to my parents and say I was staying at a friend's house. I would party every weekend with my friends and drink. I would drink until I had alcohol poisoning. I remember it got so bad. I remember just being so drunk at a family party. It was actually my dad's 40th birthday party, and I just threw up all over myself. It was so embarrassing. And I realized that feeling in my heart that would tell me to do the right thing felt more quiet. And I needed to do more extra things to feel that excitement. I started sneaking out. I started going to raves and nightclubs underage. I started smoking weed, and that led to eating shrooms. And then I dropped acid for the first time. That was a horrible experience. Never did that again. And then it was Molly and ecstasy. That was my drug of choice. It made me feel euphoria, lowered my inhibitions, and you just felt loose and vulnerable, and I loved to dance on it. I was dancing with boys, I was making out with boys, and then that moved on to making out with girls. Making out with girls, that felt familiar. It took me back to being 5 years old again. How do you reconcile what happened? I was just curious and confused. And then it was off to a new era. From high school to Hollywood. I remember this summer after my senior year, I went to Hollywood to visit a friend because I knew I wanted to move there after high school and work in entertainment, working in TV and film, and then auditioning as a hip-hop dancer for music videos. I remember driving down Hollywood Boulevard, then Sunset, and then Santa Monica Boulevard, and said, yep, just like every transplant that moves to LA, I was going to make it in Hollywood. I forgot to mention earlier in this video that I was always a creative since birth. I was gonna try college out, but ultimately I would have a career in creative somehow, and I did. I went back to Seattle. I saved up 6 months of savings to move to LA and to start my career as a starving artist. Mind you, I'd never lived outside of my parents' home before moving to LA. I was very sheltered. I never did anything really bad, but I wasn't innocent either. That's when I started to let sin in my life and started lying and keeping things from my parents, the drinking and then the drugs I was taking. But I was a young, naive kid in my 20s who was curious, also very experimental, and Hollywood couldn't wait to devour me. My parents drove me to California, and they made sure that I was set up in LA. They wanted to check out the neighborhood I was in and visit the Starbucks that I would work at. We drove to the dance studios where I would also take classes at. I could tell my parents were very sad and probably very scared for me. I remember them praying for me on the drive down there and when they had to head back to Seattle. My mom would call me to pray over me again shortly after they left. My parents are devout Christians. I grew up in church. I did love going to church when I was a kid. It gave me a sense of peace that there's something bigger out there, someone watching over me. I was aware of Jesus, but I didn't have a relationship with him yet. My mom would always tell me, I pray a hedge of protection over you. I was always covered in prayers, and Lord knows that I would need those prayers more than ever. Okay, so my first week on my own in LA, I took a dance class, and then I went to a party with my friends after that dance class. And the first thing I reached for at that party was a bottle of vodka. Vodka soda with a lime was my drink. I would meet this new group of friends and have new experiences and then also have new temptations. And at this party, my new friends would invite me to a club. And I was like, yeah, let's go. I had never been to a club in LA where I could actually legally go to now. I was 22. So I was excited, I was nervous, but I was also scared. There's that feeling in my heart again, and I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to know what the LA nightlife was all about. And I thought these new friends I made were so cool. They had this whole vibe. They dressed different. They were so LA. We'd pull up to this nightclub. It was different than any other nightclub that I've been to in Seattle. And I remember walking up to this nightclub and their logo was a really elaborate cross. It was kind of like the cross you would see at my Catholic private school or the church my family and I went to growing up. But this cross was designed with rainbow colors. This was the first time I had ever experienced a club like this. There were go-go dancers who were just going off and just voguing. And then they had soft gay porn on the TV screens. I felt surreal. I had a bit of a culture shock. And to be honest, I felt out of place. Everyone had this vibe. They talked different, they dressed different, which I didn't really wear much of anything. But I vividly remember I had brown dunks on and I had blue jeans and a tan tank top. I wasn't sure what to do. I was kind of frozen, but that feeling in my heart saying I should probably leave, but I ignored that and did the one thing I knew that would loosen me up. I drank. I ordered a vodka soda, many of them. With the music going, everyone dancing, I started to feel tipsy. I started to drop my guard, and I made it to the dance floor when this very song came on. That whole night, it was hypnotizing. I was getting this attention, and something came over me that night, and I wanted more of that kind of night. I felt accepted in my new life in LA. My whole demeanor changed. I had this different confidence. I was dressing differently. I was talking differently. Everything about me felt different. Like I was different. And I was feeling myself. And I had pride. And even though I wanted to party and go back to that club, I still needed to work and survive in LA. I worked at Starbucks. The Starbucks I worked at was absolutely crazy. I would see so many different celebrities, and it was also right across from one of the biggest porn corporations. And I would get approached to do porn all the time by actors, by directors, by producers. Guys in the porn industry who were also Starbucks customers would tell me things like, "You're sexy. you would do so good in porn. You would make so much money, and that disgusted me. So the more men approached me, the more it repelled me. And I had a desire for women, and I didn't know why. I ended up leaving that Starbucks. It was too creepy for me. I got another job working as a barista, also picking up production gigs. Then at night, I was hanging out with my friends and going to LA parties. I was going back to that club. This was my new normal. I was chasing that feeling of excitement, and I wanted more, so I started going out to more gay clubs. I would be at these clubs and parties, and my desire for women would grow. I would begin to feel that feeling again. Stop. Like, Coco, what are you doing? This was new for me. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never approached anyone like that before, let alone a girl. And I remember at this new job, there was this girl who I worked with. Honestly, I didn't even know that she was gay at first. She was pretty, super chill, funny, and would start conversations with me at work. Then the flirting started to happen. I didn't really know how to flirt back, but I was curious. She invited me to a nightclub at work with some of her friends, and it was the same nightclub that I would go to dance, the one with the rainbow cross. I met her at the club, and when we were dancing, I felt her move closer to me, and she grabbed my face and started kissing me. And I froze again, but I kissed her back. I told her I'm not gay, but I have kissed girls before. I told her I don't know what I really am at this moment. I'm not really dating anyone. I've only had boyfriends, but I do have a desire for women, and I don't know why. I told her I don't really want to date anyone. I'm just trying to figure out this part of my sexuality. I was confused. We had this fling, and it went on for a really long time. Too long. We agreed to no commitment, just a fling, no strings attached. I remember her and I and a bunch of friends were getting ready to go to Pride that June in WeHo. That's short for West Hollywood. For decades, West Hollywood had been home of one of the largest annual Pride celebrations in the world. This was my first Pride ever. I didn't know what would happen, but I was, again, excited. I was nervous, but also kind of anxious. And in my heart, this time was overwhelming. I was kind of scared and contemplated not even going. We were going to meet up with another group of friends. We got to Pride, and it was overwhelming. I went to gay nightclubs before, but I had never seen anything like this before. There had to have been over 100,000 people there. All kinds of people too. It was like men, it was women, it was families, it was kids, it was pets. It was absolutely crazy. And you see all kinds of things at Pride, right? So I felt a sense of culture shock again. It made me feel really uncomfortable to see so many kids there. The stuff that happens at Pride, like no kid should ever see or even be there at all. And yet I saw what reminded me of my childhood grooming. Then the night came, drinks were going, we were at the club we always go to, we were hanging out, and I look over, and the girl I came with was kissing someone else. I knew we weren't together, so I couldn't get mad, but at that moment, I felt so hurt. I was jealous. I had envy. I felt rejected. It started to make me feel crazy, and the alcohol didn't help. That night, my flesh took over. I became self-destructive. I drank a lot that night. I was talking to other girls trying to make her jealous. Like I was a hot mess. I was so messy that night. I felt mad at myself too. I felt like a fool. Even though we just had a fling, feelings developed. And when you share yourself with someone that close and in intimacy, you create soul ties. And everything about that night felt deceiving. I kind of wish I listened to my heart and skipped pride. I found myself in the same situation again with someone new. Then that would cycle again with someone else. I would date this girl, and then I would date that girl, and I would date another girl, and my life just really started to fall apart. You know, I didn't think my life could get any worse. But again, I was deceived. I was trying to find my place again in LA, you know, where to fit in, my identity. I would go out and meet these people, make new friends. And then I met a new friend on a production gig. He was this handsome gay guy. We ended up becoming roommates. He seemed harmless and nice, well-dressed, charismatic, and seemed well-connected. He always had access to LA nightclubs, events, and these parties. A bigger and better distraction had arrived. You know, I'd go to these parties and these mansions and on these rooftops. I was feeling it. And I was meeting new people, making new friends. I went through another cycle of changing my whole vibe. I was dressing different. You know, I was talking different. I was acting different. I was a new version of Coco. You could say that I was being promoted in my sin. But life seemed to feel better. You know, I was working on bigger production jobs. I was making good money. I had a new friend circle. The drugs they did were harder. I wasn't into doing those types of drugs, but I was definitely into that lifestyle. June 2009 came around and it was Pride Month again. My roommate and I planned ahead for Pride in West Hollywood together. And we went all out. We had a table at the main gay bar in LA, you know, the one with the Rainbow Cross. It's kind of funny. Something just kept leading me back to the cross. We drank a lot. We did a lot of drugs that night. I remember we went to an after party that night, you know, at some house near Pride. I was drunk. I was on Molly, but when we walked into that house, I knew something was off. Something didn't feel right at that party. It felt really dark and demonic. That feeling came back like a lost best friend, but I ignored it again. The music that was playing, I remember it was this really dark beat, and there was all kinds of people there, people dressed up in bondage outfits with dramatic makeup. You know, we got people chopping up coke on the table. You know, they were making out with each other. There were guys and girls, and there was guys on guys and girls on girls. You could say that it was like a full-on orgy, but my spirit didn't feel safe. My roommate ended up leaving me there with some guy, and then he said he would come back in about an hour. And I was drunk and high, so I couldn't leave. So I stayed in this room with a guy who was throwing up all night. It smelled so bad, it was awful, but I stayed in that room. I'd rather stay in that room of vomit than be around the darkness that was happening in the other room. And I just remember asking myself, how did I end up here in life? I felt trapped, and I just couldn't wait to go home. Finally, my roommate came back, thank God, you know, an hour later, like he said, and we drove home. I remember walking back to our apartment, and I felt so dark, so depressed from what I had just seen. I burrowed under my comforter, and I hid. I just wanted to crawl into a hole and die. I felt scared. I felt depressed. I felt dark and alone, was also hungover. And I was disappointed in the choices I had made since moving to LA. Pride shows you where your lifestyle is headed. Drugs and alcohol numb you and groom you to keep going. And then secrets create isolation. I was too ashamed to call my parents or call my sister, even my friends back home. But I knew I needed to make some changes. I couldn't live this life that I was living any longer. I couldn't sleep. And I remember rummaging through my room and going through all my drawers and my closet. I completely turned my room upside down, and I was frantically looking for one thing that I felt that could give me peace, and I couldn't find it. And I felt like I was looking for it for hours. And then I saw this orange Nike box in the corner of my closet. And there it was. Inside this box was my Bible. And I picked it up and I just wept. I couldn't open it, but something about holding my Bible gave me rest. It gave me peace, and I slept with it that night. You know, holding the Bible gave me comfort. And I realized that voice in my heart this whole time was God. God had been with me. Every time I felt frozen, God was with me. Every time I felt anxious, God was with me. Every time I felt confused, God was with me. And every time I felt alone, God was with me. And every time I felt dark, God was with me. Thank you, Jesus, for never leaving me. But I wasn't done with the blue pill yet.